Welcome to the SkillRanch. This podcast is designed to equip entrepreneurs, professionals, and consultants with skills to impact tomorrow's work environment. Now here's your host, Bilal.
Welcome to the SkillRanch Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Tracy, who is a leadership engagement consultant, speaker, trainer, and a coach. She is the creator and author of the Relationship Leadership Philosophy. She has worked with organizations to refine strategies on diversity and inclusion and leadership development to improve management effectiveness, change, transition, employee engagement, interpersonal communication styles, and customer relationship management skills. Welcome to the Skill Ranch podcast. How are you doing today, Tracy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Everything is great here in Toronto. How about yourself in Atlanta? How's everything?
It's hot and I'm not complaining. It's hot, but everything is well here. We've got a reduction in traffic. So even though COVID has, drove most people home, it's been great for traffic. So we have a horrible reputation for our traffic here. So it made it a lot easier to move around the city.
Yeah, things have changed a lot in the past 6 months. And a very important topic that has also been in the lights nowadays is diversity and inclusion. As I was going through your profile, Tracy, I saw that you have a lot of experience in this field. With whatever is happening around, how did you come into the field of diversity and inclusion and anti-racism?
Well, to me, as we think about everything that has happened with the Black Lives Matter movement and things being caught on tape now, on camera, I say tape, that's old school, but as things are being recorded, this is something that's been going on that for us in the African American community, it's not new to us, it's that everybody else is now seeing it. And so because of the heightened awareness of everything that's happening, the systemic suppression and oppression, the murders of all of, George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the countless others, we're seeing it now pushed in our faces and everybody else is now aware of it. And because of that, it's created this conversation in the workplace that, to me, centers around relationships. And I've been talking to organizations and training and speaking and coaching on relationships for many, many years. And many times people have not realized that differences but that exist in the workplace. And so now that we're talking about this, the way that I talk about leadership and relationships has changed. So I've always gone into organizations and talked about how to build trust on teams, leadership effectiveness, how you treat people, change management and personality styles, communication styles. And that is not all inclusive of diversity, but it is a part of diversity, a large part on how we see other people. And so diversity is wrapped up in the way that we lead. Now, most people define diversity different than other, people. A subset of people over here, they might define diversity as a black and white issue. Others may define it as a gender issue. Others an ethnicity. So we have to have a common language a common definition on how we really define diversity to begin to have that conversation on what does diversity look like. Now, as far as anti-racism, that is a true ethnic conversation. If I'm a Black person and I'm being looked over for promotions, I'm being looked over for, or looked down upon or inferior in some way by another subset or group of people, then that is racism. That is racism because the playing field is not equal and it's not an equitable distribution of resources, talent, and anything that concerns Black people where we are not. When I say we, I include myself in that because I am a Black woman, obviously, as you can see. And there have been times where we have just lived with this for we've lived with this for so long, we didn't really even think, it's almost it's like it's become part of our existence and who we are, and our being, and who we move around in the earth as. We're a Black person, we're Black people. And so this has really heightened my awareness of how much trauma we've been actually living with, that has, it's almost normalized for us. So that caused me to really start looking at how are we here, and what is the solution going forward. And as I go around and I'm listening to experts, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm listening to government officials talk about this issue. Some believe that it's all lives matter, Black lives matter. It's not that all lives don't matter. It's like Black people's lives don't seem to matter as much as all lives matter. And so you've got these conversations and these debates going on about what really matters and what's important. And it's who you ask. It's who you ask. And so I took an approach to look at viewpoints and beliefs. So people believe, they usually act out of what they believe. They behave out of what they think or what they feel or what they've been taught. And what we're finding out now, it's becoming more and more mainstream, is that what's been taught might not be historically correct. So our culture, our history, and I'm speaking specifically of the African American experience, it's been written out of a lot of the college level courses, the schools, the elementary schools. Our stories, other than Black History Month, we get a month to talk about Black people, and it's usually the same group of Black people that we talk about, Harriet Tubman and freeing the slaves. But there's so much more that African Americans have contributed to society and to the culture, to the American culture, and it goes. It's like flies under the radar. Nobody really talks about it. And so we don't realize how important that this group, or these people, our people, my people, are important to society. And now other people are seeing that they may have some hidden biases that shining light on that. And it's like, oh, I didn't realize that I do have what we define as white privilege. I define white privilege as things that you didn't have to go through. So when my sons, my husband, my brothers go out, they are always aware that they could be pulled over and that they may have an encounter with a police officer who may or may not be kind, who may be racist. They have to think about these things. Most white men don't have to think about that. So we've got an issue here that's staring us in the face. And because of our unconscious bias of what we think, we are now forced to deal with it on levels that we have never seen before. I mean, most people I won't tell my age, but people who have lived longer than me, they talk about there has never been a time that the racial tensions and things have been heightened to this level before. I think it's something that we have to face. And I think that it's something that we will be talking about, discussing for a long time to come, where we look for solutions, we look for things to help bridge the gap. What is the gap and how can we bridge it? So long answer to your question, how did I get into this? I got into this for many reasons. I was already in leadership, but the racism part and diversity as it pertains to Black and white issues came as a result of this Black Lives Matter. And what are we doing to continue the conversation and then look at our own biases on how we feel about other people? Because I felt some kind of way when all this happened. My heart was crushed. I was tired. I was worn out. I was just exhausted trying to teach. And, my non-African American friends, colleagues, about what my experience has been, what my son's experience has been, what my brother's experience has been. And so we became exhausted with that. And it's like, do your research. And then what's happened is that the white community was starting to be attacked by the Black community. because it's like, do your work. And now it's like all this trauma is coming up. All of these things, these issues are coming up from the past. And so we created this narrative around the protesting and riots and looting. And we start to put this narrative around that, which largely was because our people were not heard. I don't condone looting, not 1%, none. But a lot of what we've seen wasn't always the African American people doing the looting. Once again, there's this narrative that's out there, and so we've got this issue that has grown to proportions that we weren't prepared. We weren't prepared for this. So I have to use my voice to get into the conversation. So my space in this world at this moment is to leverage my expertise, my background, my education, my experience to add and talk about solutions, how we can come to a solution to these problems that we're seeing right now, and to these, the differences in what we are seeing and what we believe. And this is a heart issue, in my opinion. It's a heart issue. And you don't change people. You can't change people's hearts. They have to want to change. And we get to a point where we just have to educate ourselves on what that looks like and have empathy, compassion, and kindness for people who don't look like us. We have to tear down these systems. And a lot of people don't want to let those systems die. They don't want the systems to change. And so we've got this, this push and pull in our society of, no, there's nothing wrong with the system. And I wish people would just stop talking about this, and we could go back to the way things were. And when we look at 2020, we look at everything that's gone on. We've got economic issues. We've got a pandemic. We've got all these things that have happened in 2020. I believe in the divine, and I believe in God, and I believe that I don't believe that God causes this, because the God I know, that's not his nature. But I do believe that he allows certain things for correction. And I think we are in a season right now of correcting some things. And I think we will be here for a while. And I think that we all have something to contribute to the conversation, but we have to at least be able to have a conversation and take hold of our emotions, what we feel, be able to do our work. When I say do our work, that's everybody. Do our work of healing, the African American community, to work on healing and to work on how can I be in a space where I'm open to hearing. Nobody can take away the history of our people, but we can do something going forward because we have people coming after us. So I think this is a moment and a movement in time, and my goal was to be a part of the conversation.
That was a good explanation of what's happening, and I picked few points out of it, and I would go one by one. So the one thing you mentioned during the conversation was equity. And there's a very common picture that shows up on the internet that two individuals are going to watch a football match or a cricket match, and one person is tall, the other person is short. Both of them got 3 boxes to stand over so that they can see the match. The taller person can even see without those boxes, and that person with 3 boxes was unable to reach that railing over which he can watch it out. So, but if it would have been diverse, it would have been kind of a situation where everyone is welcomed and given a chance to equally participate. Then the boxes would not be 3-3, it would be like 5-1, so that both of them can watch the match at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that would help us to see what one person is going through and what resources they need in order to be at the point where they want to reach. And
Right.
it can also be related to a network. Let's say a person is very well connected and the other person is unable to get a job. That person can just put a like or a comment, and the person who's looking for a job can get more traction, more views, and at the end of the day would be able to reach into far more recruiters, companies, emails, or messages, so that they would be able to get that job.
Mm-hmm.
The second point was around the unconscious mind. That is where we need to work a lot, I suppose, that in our conscious mind, we are not biased on many ways, but some thought on the unconscious mind, and that we don't do ourselves. The unconscious mind might be looking at the news and you are just enjoying, but the unconscious mind is learning a lot of things at the back that you don't even realize.
Mm-hmm.
The unconscious mind learns from the environment. The unconscious mind remembers all the past experience in a way that your conscious mind won't even know. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to work on a mechanism that somehow kind of relates to the unconscious bias and ask those in-depth questions that allows you to deeply ponder upon what are your views. Maybe you are acceptable to everyone, and like similarly, being a person of faith, I too have the same background that each and everybody is equal,
Mm-hmm.
but the way I respond to everyone should also be on the same way. And that comes from the religious perspective, or even on the other side. That is just humanity at the end of the day. You need to respond to each and every person the way you would like somebody to respond to you. And
Yeah.
that
Part,
is that is how you need to. I think so you have a point here, Tracy. Maybe you go ahead.
that's the golden rule. We talk about the golden rule a lot. The golden rule is treat others the way that you want to be treated. And when I work with leaders and teams, I talk about that there is a little flaw in that. And it's people like, oh my God, that's the Bible, or and it's like, well, it's not wrong. When it comes to compassion, when it comes to kindness, I believe that all of us should treat people that way because we do want to be treated that way. But the assumption is that everybody wants to be treated the same way, and they don't. So I'll just give you a brief example. So I do a lot around human behavior and DISC and personality styles. And I'm considered by the instrument as a D. A D is very driven, very direct. And I like for you to give things to me straight. Just give it to me straight. I don't need all the fluff and the numbers and the facts. I just need to just tell me what it is that you want to say. Well, if you are not that type of person, you need the facts, you need numbers, you need data to make a decision. And so if the person who has that personality style that they need facts and data, they come to me to tell me something, they're going to communicate from that place of who they are. I don't want that. I don't want to hear all of the facts and the numbers. I want to hear the end result. I want to hear the end result. It doesn't make me right or wrong. It's just, I need to hear this. So the assumption is this person wants to, because I am it's also true the other way around. Let me say that. Sometimes I go to people with real direct, quick, and they're like, well, wait a minute, wait, hold on. Did you research that? Did you do this? And it's like, no, I didn't do any of that. So we make an assumption that people want to be treated just like we do. And that's not always the case. We call that the platinum rule. And we treat others the way they want to be treated, not as we want to be treated. So if I go to you and want you to be direct, and that's not you, I'm almost violating the part of you that needs that to communicate well or to connect well, if that makes sense, to relate well,
Yeah.
and vice versa. And so we have to learn how to be flexible. And the only way we can get to this point to know is to be in relationship and connect with people. And when I say relationship, I don't mean that you have to, everybody's got different levels of relationship, but to at least connect, make an attempt to connect with people. And you do it long enough, you'll start to know this person is very direct. This person likes to tell stories. This person likes to they ask questions. They're very curious. They want to know more about you. Well, if I'm the type of person that I don't like to talk about myself, I could see that as offensive. It's like, why are you asking me all these questions? So you see, there's this really fine line here between treating others the way that we want to be treated. That we want to be treated, because there's an assumption there that could be incorrect. And so that's what I wanted to say to that point, because a lot of times that's what we do, and we can end up really not being in the best place to influence. John Maxwell talks about leadership being influence, and we can often be in those places where we're not influencing, we're actually turning people off or resisting other people because of that. So
Now, to your point around DISC, I personally believe that it is only DISC, but if there would have been even like four other categories, I think so each and every one of us
yeah, we're a blend.
all falls in all. I mean, there would be a person that say you work with women and you are a grief coach to like any other individual who is in the level of grief. I'm sure you would not be a D at that point. You would be a very
Right,
high level,
exactly,
very
exactly.
high I. So to the point, how we would like to treat. I mean, if we are doing business and this is a business discussion that's going on, all of the people within the room would like to be like a D focused on doing business, a C that shows them the facts whether this business is viable or not. So I totally get what you were saying, and maybe that is where you are putting a point about empathy, about emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Just beyond that, I mean, the relationship starts on the first day, and that first day would be cold. You need to work over it to know each other well, and only then something fruitful can happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very, you mentioned about John Maxwell. So he has written even a book on everyone communicates. We all do that, but
Yes,
only few connect.
right,
That level of connection is what we need to reach,
right,
and that level of connection we need to work hard on achieving that.
right.
In my MBA program, we were a group of 5, 6 students that worked on a project for Adult Learning Center, and majority of the students that were in that particular school came from underprivileged backgrounds. And this was a 5 to 6 week program that we were running on teaching them concept about entrepreneurship. I mean, the first day we went, if we went there in like three-piece suits, that is the typical style of MBA students, it wouldn't connect with them. We were in like casual dresses that relates to those students. We shared stories, not about like MBA stories or MBA case studies. We shared them the stories of where our childhood was. I came from a third world country too. The problem that I faced are very similar to the problem that an underprivileged community member will face within such regions. And that is where we connected with them.
Mm-hmm.
It allowed them to participate in that program that they had to attend after their school hours. Who would like to stay after school? I mean, you can go out and enjoy, have your leisure time, play with your friends, but like because we connected with them, that allowed those students to participate. And even after the 5 week period, they realized how much forward they had come. But that was only possible because initially we connected with them. We were emotionally intelligent to know what was their background,
Mm-hmm.
will work for them and what didn't.
Right.
That is why it is very important to be emotionally intelligent,
Yes.
important to see what is happening around you, and then you can make the best informed decision.
Right.
Taking a discussion to more corporate world, so how do you see corporation define diversity and inclusion? Because we kind of relate both of the word. It is usually called D&I, but
Mm-hmm.
diversity is different, inclusion is different. So for the audience, Tracy, could you please share what these words mean?
So diversity, I've seen some things out there that really make it simple, and I like and it's obviously there are people who will define this in a totally different way, but I think to simplify it, the diversity is being invited to the party,
Oh, yes.
and, and inclusion is being asked to dance,
Mm-hmm.
to ask to contribute to the company. I think in my experience working with different companies and even in different countries, they the again, back to what I said originally, diversity has this broad definition. Is it black, white? Is it male, female? Is it LGBTQ? Is it, what is it? So we've got this big pool of diverse people, meaning they're all different. So how are we going to define it as an organization? What does it mean to us? And so I think that's part of what needs to happen first for organizations inside the corporate space, to really define, what does that look like for us? What is it? And what does it look like for us to have a diverse and inclusive work culture? So when we say inclusion, we're talking about each individual member having the ability to contribute something of value to the company. So you may put me on a team, but that a team in marketing, but maybe that my background experience lends itself to that. But there are maybe special projects that I would like to work on. There are things that I would like to explore, ideas. And if those ideas are not welcomed, they aren't respected, then I feel as a person of color at the organization that I'm not valued. I'm not valued. And so again, diverse and inclusive work cultures is really showing a array of, I think one company that does this well is Amazon. Amazon is the world's largest tech company, and they've got, global presence. And although they, they're different regions, I think that what I've seen, I did some Juneteenth special for Amazon back on June 19th, and I heard questions and comments from different people who connected with me on social media about what diversity, means to them and what it looks like in their organization. And I thought, you've got people, black, white, all age, groups, millennials down to Generation Z, and we've got all these different, or baby boomers down to Generation Z. So we've got this whole array of people, of age groups, of people working together, colors, ethnicities, sexual orientation, all of these different things. But it seems, at least from as an outsider looking in, that their ideas are valued. And I'm an outsider looking in, that their ideas are valued, and that they have a work culture that actually is innovative. And so without the diverse and inclusive concepts being at play in the work culture, I think companies are missing out on a big opportunity, a huge opportunity to grow and to thrive in the future of where we're going. I mean, we're a colorful group of people that live and are present during this moment and this movement. And I think that overlooking that from a corporate standpoint is a big mistake. So companies should take this opportunity to look at, what is it that we do? Who is doing it? What makes us purpose driven? I'm working right now with some women leaders on purpose, and it's something that I'm considering taking into organizations on the blueprint for success. What does purposeful organizations, what do they do well? What do they do well? And most of them that I've researched so far have a diverse and inclusive culture, meaning that they really value their people. They have a people first mentality. They walk their talk, and they live their values. So these are established. They're not just plaques on a wall somewhere in the office. Well, now everybody's remote, so they're not just posted on the company's website on the intranet. They are actually lived out from the top down, managers down to janitors. Everybody is living these values. That is being purpose driven. And so for companies right now to create diverse work cultures, they will have to first start with, what do we define diversity and inclusion as? So the definition I gave was a very broad one, but what does that look like in our organization?
And before even moving towards creating a culture of diversity and inclusion, everybody is coming from a different religion, ethnicity, language background, color, gender, and we need to understand them. And this is a difficult topic to start. You can't just go walk to someone and ask about what they want. It is, we need to create a safe environment where
Mm-hmm.
everybody feels safe, that if they share something personal about themselves, that would not affect their growth within the company.
Mm-hmm.
How do we go about creating a safe environment that will welcome different opinions, and how can we just create that in a small organization, and once that organization has become significantly bigger, how can we create them in individual department to ensure it is expanded over the whole company?
I, one word, listen, listen. Listening to other experiences, other cultures, other ethnicities, and my experience as a woman of color is much different than yours. And we talked about this on our initial conversation. So for me to understand you and I just wrote a post about this today on LinkedIn. It's so interesting that you're asking me about this. That in order for me to understand you, I need to connect with you. So I think about it as a hat. So I have on my hat and you have on your hat. And so everything that I think under my hat, my head, every thought that I have is from my perspective. It's from my hat. And so for me to understand yours, I need to take off my hat. And I need to get inside your hat almost. I need to get inside your brain to see how you think. And so I need to be curious. So how is it? And you need to feel safe with me answering those questions. So if I have become curious and ask you those questions after I've listened and maybe communicated back to you what I heard you say, you have to have a level of safety with me in order to respond. So I talk a lot about psychological safety, and in my grief recovery groups that I run, one of the commitments that we make 3 commitments to each other every time we meet. And one of those commitments is we are respecting the uniqueness and individuality of each person. So what that looks like, if my dog died and your mother died, that is not something to start comparing, because your grief with your dog is 100%, or my dog and your mother is your grief is 100% for you. So our grief is 100%. We don't put judgments on, well, you're just talking about a dog. I mean, you can replace a dog. You can't replace a person. That's judgment and that's comparison. And we are minimizing the emotional impact that this event has had on someone else. We cannot connect with people and think we'll have influence with them if we take that approach. So part of this conversation and creating safety is learning how to listen. And you listen with your heart as well as your ears. Because when you are listening, I am filtering everything you say through my heart and my mind. Most of the time it's your mind first. But when you start to seek first to understand rather than to be understood, which is one of Stephen Covey's 7 habits, you begin to take off your hat and put the other person's hat on and get into their space to understand how they think, what they believe. Only then can I start to really make a connection to understand them, because when we feel understood, we feel safe.
That is a very powerful point that you made. I will come back to this one with a different view towards the end, but here the point that you're making, that once we start judging,
Mm-hmm.
then we are understanding somebody else's perspective according to our views rather than the nature, the experience, the background, the feeling, the emotion the other person is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
We don't understand that if we start judging those things.
Mm-hmm.
That is where you have to listen extremely deeply, with keeping your mind totally focused on the individual, and only then you can
Our
go.
biases get in the way of listening a lot too.
Yeah.
We're not hearing what's being said. We hear what we think is being said.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first step to create a safe environment where individuals feel psychologically safe.
Mhm.
The next step that we can do is to make the organizations diversified and have an inclusive culture. What would be your thoughts around that? How can we create an organization that is considered to be diverse, like a diversity and inclusion organization? And especially our team, like I did inform my colleague Trent that we are doing a recording today on diversity and inclusion, and he said that we would like to also know how a company that has recently started, that is 2 to 3 years old, can continue the diversity and inclusive culture that we have today and move it forward even when we have 50, 100, 500 employees and even grow further. How can we ensure to have it and to ensure that we keep it going through once we are even bigger?
Great question. That's an excellent question. And I'm getting asked that question quite a bit. So first out, the first step was defining diversity. What does that look like for us? And then committing to what a common language would be around diversity. So if we want to create a diverse and inclusive culture, what does that look like? Are we talking about Black, white, if different ethnicities? What are we talking about? And then what do we value? So the same things that corporations are doing now, but there's another level of that, and that's behavior. How do we attract? I know this is a big question that a lot of companies are asking. How do we attract and recruit and retain a diverse workforce? Well, you have to create that, and people will come who want to be involved in a diverse workforce. So therefore, your website, your company cultures, what does it look like, your marketing, everything around who you say you are needs to match. Everything, your corporate identity, your corporate branding, your website, everything that we look at, social media. So I need to see more of people who look like me. Because one of the things that happened early on when the Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd murder had just happened, we saw a lot of companies use these statements of solidarity and standing against racism. Well, you can stand against something, but what are you for? What are you for? And then what does that look like in action? I can say that I am against racism, but what does that mean? Have we looked internally to see where we may have some racism and systemic systems or systemic oppression and systems that are set up that are not inclusive of all people? So do we have enough diversity on our board? And if I've heard this argument from some leaders in corporate America that talk about qualified candidates. Well, should we just hire a candidate just because they're a person of color and maybe they're not qualified? That statement in and of itself is a racist statement, in my opinion. So what you're saying is you cannot find, let's just use a person of color, for instance, or a woman, we can use both. You cannot find anywhere on the planet a person who fits the expertise that you want on this position. I don't care how far you've got to look, you have to look. We have the World Wide Web now. We have a global pot to choose from. You cannot tell me that you can't find someone who fits exactly what you have. The problem becomes when you put those positions and post those positions and you're on a search for this person, depending on how many layers they have to go through, headhunters and executive search firms and what have you, you've got all these layers of people who could have biases. So they're only going to look in certain places to bring you a selective group of candidates. I guarantee you there are people out here that are well qualified who do not fit the white male or white female genre. They don't fit that. And because there are more whites on boards than blacks, so let's just face it, there are people who don't fit that, who are well qualified to sit on those those boards. However, the excuse is we can't find people, or we just have to hire this person just so we can give the appearance of being diverse. And it's like that in itself is a system. That's a system of oppression. It's like, well, so and then when they get on the board, then they've got to fight to have their voices heard. So it's another level of this. So when you ask the question, what do corporations need to do? They need to take a real hard look internally to make sure that they are living up to the values that they said they would live up to. That means a behavior change from the top down. It's inclusive of hiring a diverse group of people. It's also inclusive of training, developing. People want, back, and I'm, a little bit more seasoned than Generation Z or millennials, but people didn't leave and job hop a lot. They didn't job hop a lot. And so when you find a company, and there are many reasons for that, but loyalty is something that I think every company would like to have. Loyalty. I would like to have a group of loyal employees because we can share in this experience of growth. If I, as an employer, am not doing anything to help you to grow and to help you to develop your potential and maximize your potential as my employee or working for my organization, I've done you a disservice. So we've got to look internally at all these systems, hiring, the board. We've got to look at how we treat people, because those reviews that are on these job boards tell a different story than what's being told inside. So what is the reputation of the organization? What are people saying about us? And, we can't just dismiss all of the low stars. If you got 5-star ratings and 1 star, you can't just dismiss the 1 star as disgruntled employees. And we can't just do that. We've got to listen to what's being said. Again, listen. This is not the time to resist everything. It's a time to listen. Maybe bring those people, back to a table and say, hey, what could we be doing better? What could we do that would make the workforce or the workplace more diverse or more inclusive? What did we miss? What are we missing, or what did we miss? What can we do better? What would you like to see? What would make you feel more of, as a team player here, what would make you feel like you belong? And that's a big human emotional need, is the need for belonging. Because wherever you feel like you fit, you're loyal to that. So if we want loyalty and we want to train and develop people to bring their best, but not just bring their best at this level, to help them grow and reach their full potential, we've got to look at all of these things to be able to say that we are a diverse and inclusive culture, and that we welcome all people, and that we do not discriminate. We don't have a system. The system is fair. The system is equitable for each and every person, no matter what your, you do have to bring a certain level of expertise. If something requires you to have a 4-year degree or, advanced degree, you have to have that, you have to have it. But in order for us to play fair, we've got to look at these internal systems and say, what can we do internally? Because what people hear, what companies say they're going to make changes, what your employees hear and what they see may be a lot different than what you said in the media. And it only takes a couple tweets, a couple blog posts to really tell a story that's not being shared, which can definitely be damaging to a company's corporate reputation.
Here I would like to share about the John Maxwell team, where both of us are connected. And our motto, our statement is people of value, value to others. I would share examples of JMT Hug. I know many individuals attended the conference this time virtually, so I won't kind of tell how it is. But if you just analyze that hug, it is safe, it is ethical, so both the person don't feel uncomfortable around it. Kind of culture. Then our team has probably all the religions there, and we talk openly about what we believe, and we share example. Maybe sometimes if you're sitting on a round table with JMTers, you might find more example coming from the religious world. or whatever belief somebody has compared to the leaders of today.
Mm-hmm.
Having that kind of a culture where you can share whatever views you can to add value and those would be respected. Maybe that is why why John Maxwell team is doing what it has been doing compared to the other organizations who are in the same playing field. And to sum up your conversation, just this part of the conversation we had, loyalty comes from being valued.
Mm-hmm.
Being valued means you are appreciated, you are listened, you are being given value to your thoughts are being discussed, action are being taken, and at the end of the day, you are contributing towards the growth of the company, and that is being uh, well received, and you are getting promotion based upon it, upon them, and getting appreciation on them, and that makes you a loyal employer. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a very common saying that people don't leave companies; they leave bosses. So if you have that culture, that thing would you will have loyal employees who won't want to leave your companies. And now coming back to the thought around judgmental, like I see that when I was just listening to your thoughts on judgmental thing that we utilize daily during the coaching practice. If you have a coaching partner that you coach and you are listening to what your client is saying, and if you start analyzing on that, then you are just listening on a level one where you're getting their opinions, you're applying it to yours, and see how that thing affects you.
Mm-hmm.
Next state, this is level two, you kind of are listening to that person. Your thoughts are not there anymore, but you are not directly listening to that person. This is even a better stage. But what level three does, it not only you are truly listening to the person with no thoughts in your mind, but you're seeing their emotions.
Mm-hmm.
What is the point they don't want to share? Or what is something they are passionate about? What is something that they would like to hide? And that is where the questions you shared, how can we make you more be a part of the society, be a part of the company, be a part of the team? And maybe those questions might be asked on a one-on-one calls where a person feels more trusted, a person feels more comfortable sharing those things. And once you start, because these are difficult conversations, but when you start, that trust starts to build up, and then you should ensure that that trust is being carried forward. And maybe that's what I feel from your conversation can be a good way of creating a team, creating a company diverse down the road, even when they're like Amazon, who have employees all over the world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Trust takes time to build, but it can be torn down in a second, a nanosecond. And trust comes from trustworthy behaviors. Talking and walking have to match. You can't say you're going to do something and then don't do it. Or if you can't do it, communicate that. You can't pretend like you care when you really don't care. You know, John Maxwell always says people, I don't know if it's him, I don't know who originally, I think it was Maya Angelou that says people, I don't know who it was, but the quote is people don't care how much you know. They care, they want to know how much you care.
Yeah.
Or people won't ever remember what you said, but they will definitely remember how you made them feel. I think that was Maya Angelou. So part of our connecting with people is caring for them, caring about what's happening in their world, caring about their, we don't get into a lot of personal things sometimes at work, or we have some boundaries or parameters about how much we share. But if I know that you have a son or a daughter, I'm going to ask about that. When I used to be in sales many years ago, I used to sell radio advertising and media sponsorships and things like that. And when I would go out to a prospect's office, I would always look around their environment. And I'd scan the room for pictures or anything that would help me to connect with them. Because many times up until this point, other than doing internet research, I couldn't really get a handle on what's important to this person. But when they're in their personal space, you can see many times what's important to them. So if I saw a picture of their teenage daughter, her cheerleading picture, I would ask about that. It's like, is that your daughter? And they would say, yeah. The whole mood would just change. Like, yeah, that's my daughter. It's like, oh wow, she cheers for blah blah blah. How old is she? And she graduating? And they just light up, and people feel like you are really concerned and you're curious about my life. And it's like, oh wow, that's great. And and it doesn't have to be fake. It can, if you really are coming from a genuine place, it's not fake. Like, you really care about what they care about. So you connect with people based on what's important to them. And sometimes you have to get into their environment. I mean, now we've got Google. We can't get in anybody's environment now because of the social distancing. So the next best step is for us to Google and comb through their personal profiles. What are they posting? What do they put on Twitter? And what do they put on Facebook and LinkedIn? And so for us to really find out and connect and who they are. But in exchange for that, you get a person who feels like you get them. You also get a person who feels like, this is somebody that I could do business with, or this is somebody that I could work for, or this is someone who I'd like to have in my circle or in my space. So it's important for us to know that we connect with people based on something that is important to them first, because we are here to be servants. So it's not about us. It's not about us all the time. It's not about what you want to sell. It's not about what your quota. And a lot of sales teams miss this point. It's not about you and your product or your service. It's not. It's about what the value you bring to the other person. And it's what they see as valuable, not what you see as valuable. So we've got to learn how to connect, because a lot of sales is just connection. That's actually where I first got my kind of like a little bug for, like, wow, relationships. I said, people buy from people. They really do buy from people they know, like, and trust, but people that they also believe, who believe in them and they believe in what they're doing. People who are confident. And so I thought, what, there's something more to this that's being taught than in these sales trainings. There's something more than just selling here's your widget, go sell these today and don't come back with any, come back with orders or purchase orders. So the part of this connection is very is connecting with people on a level where they feel heard, they feel valued is key, and they feel acknowledged. They feel acknowledged, like you've acknowledged their existence of what's happening in their world. And the only way that you can find out what's happening in their world is to be curious and listen. Ask questions and listen. That's what sales really is. Asking questions and listening. And how can I make your life better? How can I make your organization better? How can I make these things better if I'm not connecting with you, if I'm not asking these questions, if I'm not caring about what you care about? And you see it every day. Well, probably not so much right now because we're not interacting with the public a lot. But if you really slow down and pay attention, everywhere you go, you can pretty much gauge the level of care that you're getting, or even that you're giving, by how you interact with people. When you go to a grocery store, do you smile? Do you connect with people? Do you say hello? Do you look the cash register, the lady at the cash register, do you look her in the eye or look him in the eye? Do they look you in the eye? Because I did this as an experiment once. I went to the grocery store and, you put all your items up on the belt and they're just beep, beep. They're just scrolling your items by, and they never looked up. Not one time they never looked up. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to say something. It's like, hi, how's your day going? And they stopped for a second. It was like, it's going well. Thank you for asking. So rather than being just a mechanical, like a mechanical action of, I just need to, get these people through my line, I can stop and connect with people. And so I'm like, you having a good day? Sometimes they say, no, I'm not having a good day. And I'm trained to be okay with that. Let today not be okay. And it's okay that it's not okay. Tomorrow is coming. Tomorrow, God willing, is coming, and it'll be a better day. And so just, be strong, be courageous, be confident. And sometimes you'll say thank you. Just a brief 2-minute conversation can help lift somebody's day. And I think if we would, and I'm not the person who, flies around on a hallelujah cloud all day thinking that the world is, rainbows, puppies, and sunshine, because that's not true. But I can do my part. I can shine my light when I go to places, because that's all I am in control of and responsible for, is what I do, my actions and my behaviors. And I think if people would pay more attention to that, we could have better organizations. It can't always be about profits and also that is why we do what we do, but it can't always be that as the main thing. It has to be the people. It's the people that make the profits. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And I believe that when people feel like they belong in a culture where they're respected, where they're valued, where their opinions are heard and that they matter. And this is something that leaders and managers really have to grab a hold of. It's not just production and just go and just do these things. It's about people, because we can see how this thing with diversity, this whole conversation around diversity, we can see what's happened. We can see what's happened here. So how are we going to come to a solution and get people to at least want to come to work and feel valued at work? We've got to care about where they are. You've got to care about your Black employees who've been traumatized. I've read many blogs and articles and heard conversations and meetings where, consultants are saying to their clients that, be kind to your Black employees today. And some of them are like, they can grieve on their own time. This is work. Here they are on a Skype or a Zoom meeting trying to hold it together by what they're experiencing, the trauma from seeing things every week happen to someone that looks just like them. That's trauma. And so we're just dismissive of that, like, oh, they can go deal with that on their own time. That's not a way to build a diverse and inclusive work culture. Not at all. It doesn't take into account the person. So we've got some work to do. We've got some discussions to be held, to be had. And we also have some behaviors that we need to really look at. And looking at yourself is kind of hard. It's some grief there, and that's what I do in my coaching, after we do these trainings. And a lot of times people want individual help where they I really do need to help. I need some help in putting this together. And I feel this way. And that's, we can only deal with what's true. What's true. And what's true for you, whether you want to admit it to other people or not. I think most people inherently know what's true for them if they live from their heart, not their head. And there's help for that. But we don't sometimes like to admit we need help or we want help. And so we just continue on with the status quo, and then we end up with what we end up with. So.
Oh, those are fantastic thoughts, Tracy. And I would just like to close with this thing, like change takes time. Change doesn't happen in a day. So similarly with transformation, society won't transform in a day. But each and every one of us have to take the steps that we can in our domain, in our world, in our way, to make that a better place for the people of color, for different genders, for different religions, people, so that each and everybody is welcome. And on the other hand, we should try to appreciate, like, an organization can't move through the ladder of diversity in a day. But if somebody is genuinely doing something, appreciate them. But this is not an easy task to start, because you need to understand, you need to listen, and then you need to incorporate those thoughts, and only then you can create a diversified organization that is catering to the needs and providing equitable opportunity to each and every individual. It will take time, but once we have started, we will eventually reach to our end goal. And we can't be the most inclusive organization on any day, because there's always room for growth. So
Right.
as you relate to yourself on personal growth, leaders grow daily and not in a day. But this is something we should strive as organizations to work on it bit by bit so that 6 months down the road, a year down the road, we are far ahead from where we are today.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Crisis reveals your leadership.
Yep, it does, and that I you see some people are becoming extremely successful, and some people have to make some tough decisions as organizations to
Right.
sustain through this period.
That's right.
I know we talked on a very tough topic about diversity and inclusion, and let's talk something more light. So, Tracy, share some fun fact about yourself with the audience.
Oh my goodness. You caught me off guard there. Let's see. What's a fun fact? Fun fact is I am, let's see, I love dance. I love Zumba dance. That's a fun fact. The Latin dancing, I love to move. And I'm a grandmother of 3.
Nice.
Most people like, oh, I can't believe you're a grandmother. That's because Zumba. That's because I do Zumba. But I am I love reading, and I'm not even sure that's like such a part of who I am. I don't know if you would call that fun. It's fun for me because I love to read. I just love reading and consuming just good content, and people like thought leaders. I really do love to read, and anything around neuroscience and leadership and human behavior and spirituality and things like that. I love to read. And when I'm in the mood, I love to learn about herbs and things that are natural and healthy for our bodies. So I experiment with things occasionally. So those are some, I don't know if you call those fun. That's just me.
That's great. Thanks for sharing those thoughts, Tracy. And once again, on behalf of the Skill Ranch, I would really appreciate that you came here and you talked about a very important topic and shared your wonderful insights around it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me.
It was pleasure talking to you, Tracy. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Bye bye.
So thank you everyone, and I'm looking forward to having you all on the next episode of Skill Ranch Podcast.